So good evening, everyone. I welcome all of you here for this particular episode of Pharma Literati Talks, which was earlier Pharma Talks. We have renamed it as Pharma Literati Talks, wherein we have resources from industry as well as academia speaking about their own experiences with respect to pharmaceutical industry or the careers in pharmaceutical industry as well. And we are fortunate enough to have here Sita VG. She's our guest for this particular session today. And welcome, Sita, first of all.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, so let me just brief you about pharma literati generally, as well as what is pharma literati talks, the concept of pharma literati talks as such. So pharma literati was started long back as such, like 5-6 years back as a blog, but then now we are doing lots of activities, different activities under the brand pharma literati, including some of the courses. We are associated with lots of educational institutions as well as the corporates as well. And this is the educational activities are more related towards the benefits of the students, especially because I feel most of the times there is a kind of a lag between what is being taught at the institute level and what is actually happening in the industry. And we thought of giving these students some kind of platform wherein they can learn from the experts in respective domains. So Pharma Literary Talks, as I mentioned, it was earlier called as Pharma Talks. We started with one of the institutes in Navi Mumbai, and this was really this got really good feedback, and then we thought of taking it virtually. So we conducted some interviews from people who have got expertise in QBD or techno marketing, or someone who did who is actually doing her job in Germany as well for the studies in or the career opportunities in Germany. So today we have Sita, who would be speaking about her journey in terms of the research career, especially in terms of the pharmaceutical industry. So and we also have some students, Sita, here who are either interns of pharma literati, or they are part of the core team who are did some courses with us earlier. So they would be also here to give you some kind of bombarding of the questions, I would say. Okay. So to start with, Sita, just tell us something about your career as such. When you started as a pharmacist, was it pre-planned to join pharmacy as such as a career?
Yeah. Good evening, everybody. Good evening, students. Thank you very much, sir, for this introduction and for this platform, because I really feel that interacting with students will give them a wider spectrum of what to pursue in the future. So I think Pharma Literary Talks is doing a very good job, and it's going to benefit a lot of students, which I know what we missed when we were taking up these opportunities. Because when we know, we had to individually contact people. So I think this is a very good platform. Now, starting with, I was very average in my bachelor's. Our bachelor's, absolutely, after 12th, giving that CET, everybody wanted to get into medicine. If no MBBS, then you go to BDS. If no BDS, then you still come to physiotherapy or speech therapy, occupational therapy, such kinds. I was also the similar kinds. I was in the rat race. I was trying to get a seat in the MBBS. So nothing worked out for me. I was falling short of 2-3 marks or whatever. Then I had this good opportunity at Bhanupin Nanavati College of Pharmacy to get into B Pharm. It was like 7 minutes away from my home. So my parents were very happy to send me into this bachelor's course. And of course, dad did his literature, and of course, he was like, B Pharm is a good course. If not MBBS, then we come to next that is closest to medicine, which is pharmacy. And after bachelor's, I was glad I could do bachelor's. I really got into that subject of pharmaceutics. I loved it. I loved the practicals that were there, and maybe I had good professors who introduced me very well to that subject. So that's how I get got into bachelor's. That is finished my B Pharm.
Yeah, so you spoke about actually Bhanuben Nanavati College of Pharmacy, BNCP, because as pharma literati also we are associated and have been working with most of the faculty members. Can you a bit tell us about your experience? Of course, everyone loves the institute जहाँ पे वो B Pharm करते हैं. Tell us something about BNCP that helped you grow as an individual in your career.
Yeah. So in bachelor's, that was that had just started. Maybe I was the third batch of bachelor's for BNCP. So the teachers, the professors were very lively. Like because it was a new college, they wanted to excel in everything. But I was an average student, not paying much attention to the practicals or just in the last bench writing journals. So I was that kind of a student, but I was very much interested in pharmaceutics. So in a couple of professors like Padmini ma'am, a lot of other professors also, those experienced people, they really paved a path for me to create a liking in that subject. The way my industry experience, the way she created industry experience to our experience of what we are doing in the lab, it really helped me. Then there was Tabassum ma'am, who was chemistry teacher. She really, I mean, she's just student friendly. So, that connect that we had. And basically the part is, since it was a new college, all the professors were always on their toes. They were always, trying to help the students. Professor Pramod Kadu, so he used to teach us microbiology. So they were maybe just masters and, a little experience when they had begun their career at BNCP. And BNC being a new college with a lot of support from the trust, so they were always pushing us to do better. So when we used to take part in RX, so they always used to help us with new projects, like new ideas. So it really helped me shape up to go into a future career.
Yeah, and although you mentioned that it was a new college at that point of time, if you see the kind of growth actually BNCP as an institute has got over a period of time, and I've been experiencing it as well in last 3 years, is maybe that maybe like because of the reasons that you actually mentioned. Okay, then you did your masters in pharmaceutics. Fortunately, how was your experience working with your guide? Tell us more about your guide as well.
Yeah, I would love to talk about her. So after finishing my bachelor's, so one more thing I need to mention is, since it was a new, my batch was not, we didn't have many seniors to ask. So the GPAT was a really very new concept. And of course, in the rat race, I was also preparing for GRE TOEFL. I really appeared for GRE TOEFL. I wanted to fly to the US to do my master's. So all of them were in place. But just because of some family issues, I could not pursue my career in master's abroad. So just with my dad always likes being on the safer side. So with his advice, I also filled in the GPAT admission form. I didn't really study much, but I really thank God for it. I qualified GPAT. So because of that, I got admitted to a very good institute, which is Vivekananda Education Society's Pharmacy for masters, and they were first batch, and I was their first student in pharmaceutics. So everything just fell into the right place. Then when I took admission, I had two guides there. One is Professor Supriya Shide, who's also the principal of Vivekanand, and the second was Dr. Ganga Srinivasan, so who had just shifted recently from NMIS to Vivekanand. So I worked under both, though my main guide was Dr. Ganga Srinivasan. So my entire project was under her, and she's such a lovely lady. Like, I mean, if I sometime come into this academic profession of teaching, I would really like to have qualities that she has, like how to connect with the students, how to guide the students, and be a friend, philosopher, guide in the true sense. So that is one thing I really appreciate and look up to her for that.
Okay, that's good to know about Ganga ma'am actually, because even I had an opportunity to kind of meet or interact her lots of times, and So how did you actually move on to micro labs then? I mean, what made you enter into typically research career?
Yeah. So in masters, we had two options. One, either we pursue our course or the second year project work in the college itself, Or the second thing is, if your guide has contact and if the guide wishes, you could go to the industry to pursue your master's project. So since Ganga ma'am was also new to the college, she also had a lot of industrial contacts. So she asked us if we like to take our industrial project in the industry, and we were very happy because we as students are solely dependent on our guide. So she sent us to micro labs. So my colleague Brijesh and me, so we did our 6 months internship. That is a part of our master's project in micro labs. So basically, when you do, so there are pros and cons of both. When you do your master's project in the college itself, and when you do your master's project in the industry, you have pros and cons. So here, if you're doing it in the industry, you get accustomed to the industrial work culture. You get accustomed to a lot of regulations, whatever is happening. Suppose you are developing a product for the US market, for the Europe market, so you come to know a lot of guidelines, which otherwise if you are in college you might not be strong in the regulatory aspect, but you might be strong in academic oriented literature, in academic oriented discussion with the guide, getting her inputs in terms of core research, not in terms of development. So research and development are two different aspects, which
Okay.
if goes hand in hand, then it becomes a product and it shifts forward to the market. So academic purely orients towards research, and when you're in the industry you are doing research as well as you are also pushing development forward. So these are the basic differences. Then after I finished my master's project, and then when I was submitting my the sample thesis to Mr. Pankaj Mandpe, who's now the vice president of Micro Labs. So, he always asked me, what do you want to do in future? And I was always like, I want to do PhD. So he also, I mean, we had that discussion quite early when I was in my project. And when I went to give him my sample thesis, he asked, have you got admission? I said, not yet, not this year, maybe next year. So he said, yeah, I went to meet him on a Friday. Who said, okay, then you can join us on Monday. No interview needed. He's like, you can directly join me on Monday. So since I also didn't have anything in hand, I was like, yes, sure, sir, I would love to, come and learn more in micro labs as a research associate.
Okay, okay. And in fact, let me tell you my experience or my incidents which you may not be aware of as such, which happened with Pankaj sir when I rejoined for the second time in Micro Labs. That point of time, I don't remember the exact project name, but that point of time when I was discussing with Pankaj sir, he told me actually usually he tells us about the group leaders as such, but he told me about you. No, she would come to you and she would provide you all the details whatever. I said, sir, she's a research associate. No, he was like, no, but you just interact with her, she would give you all the details. So I have personally experienced it as well, you had a kind of a, I would say a right kind of image or जो एक formulation scientist का होना चाहिए, even to the top level at the research center right there as well. So Sita, just
In
one thing.
fact, I remember interacting with you for the first time when you had joined as the IPR head, and that was a new culture. Then when you give your developmental formulation and discuss the idea. So I remember Sandeep Pawar had sent me to you, to discuss, and you were so friendly, like the level and you just asking what are your future aspirations, what do you want to. I remember our first conversation very well. So it really made kind of a very comfortable environment. The entire the working environment is very comfortable thanks to people like y'all.
Yeah, but and I never actually thought that at some point of time in my career I would be like kind of interviewing you as well.
Glad for that.
Yeah, yeah. So, Sita, moving ahead, actually, was your were you planning for your PhD when you were doing your masters?
Yes, when I was in my master's, I realized that there is a certain amount of interest that I have in research. So basically, I am a person who's always asking why to certain questions. So, if my mother or my mother in law randomly say that, okay, this is the way it has to be done, my first question is logically why? Do we know why we are doing this? So, I think this particular question of why gives you a very superior interest in what you are doing, in what your day-to-day activities are. So when I was doing my masters, I really liked working for the industry, and somewhere in the back of my mind I always wanted to do a PhD. But PhD, you have very limited intakes, So there has to be a particular amount of, that exams that you give, you have to clear, and maybe if you are lucky enough, you're destined enough, you get into admission into a good college under a good guide with a good project with proper tuition. So all of these are, together you have to count when you are when you want to get into PhD. So again, as I said, that year I missed my opportunity of getting into PhD. So of course I worked with micro labs for almost 1 year and 3 months. When I started working with micro labs, after say 3 to 4 months, I knew there was an examination, entrance examination coming up at ICT. So an ICT being one of the most reputed institutes, obviously everybody, want to go. In fact, for masters, they had called 250 candidates rank wise for interviews, and I was 251. So I missed my opportunity for masters getting into admission into ICT. I mean, of course, they have very limited intake. So then I used to come home. I used to be damn tired after working in the formulation department. I would like to tell the students that formulation department is kind of hectic. It is like, you are weighing, you want to granulate, you want to tablet, then you're walking to the IPQC again and again to test your tablets average weight and dimensions, thickness. That phase of 3 months, when I was getting used to that formulation development, it was damn tiring for me. And my mom used to wonder, what is this girl going and doing in the R&D in the lab? So in spite of that, coming home 2 hours dedicated, I used to read, because I had to brush up my knowledge if I have to give my entrance exam. And those knowledge are what I use in the formulation R&D, what I was being sharpened for at micro labs. At the same time, I need to also have the theoretical knowledge. So I used to come home and I used to prepare myself for the entrance exam. Then there was this entrance exam. So when I was in micro as well, I was always determined to quit and do my PhD, do my further research.
Okay. But then now, based on your experience, would you recommend doing PhD right after the masters, or maybe having a kind of a experience of, let's say, 1 year or two, and then go for the PhD?
Yeah. So this is a very confusing question which most students also ask. Personally, as per my opinion, since I've also seen the industry for a brief period, I really think having that industrial experience really adds on to your profile. So if you directly come to PhD after masters, you are in that zone. You are in that academic zone. You have done your literature in the masters. You have discussed with your guide. You have that kind of knowledge, or that 1 year whatever masters upbringing. But when you go to the industry, you know what the industry is exactly like. What you do in the research not necessarily is applicable or directly transferred to the industry. Industry has a lot of other aspects, like regulatory aspects. So when we are doing our master's project, we are not really concerned about the ingredient selections, for example. We are not thinking whether is it acceptable at the US market, is it acceptable at the Europe market. We just randomly select, and at the end we think, when we are submitting our thesis, we think, oh, what if a guide asks, external asks, what am I going to reply? When you're coming to the industry, it's completely reverse. You have the innovator product, generic market. You have the innovator product. You are reverse engineering it. You are doing a literature. You're trying to understand whether is it going to give me problems in the future. So these are the basic thought differences that you have when you're working in industry and PhD. And I very well think that the knowledge that you gain in the industry is always going to help when you come for the PhD. So on my personal experience, the 1.5 years of experience that I had in the generic industry in microlabs has really helped me in my overall development in my PhD.
But then, has it actually helped you in terms of technical terms when you are right now doing your PhD at ICT?
Yeah, definitely it has helped, because in the industry we see big machines. We see we follow the exact protocols according to the USB IP for evaluations of, say, the tablet blend of the tableting process. But what we do in PhD or in masters is just to understand what we are doing. But you actually have a practical experience of what is the possible limit and what can you do, because you are seeing larger batches there. So you exactly know what changes you make to get your result. And these type of thinking, this particular thought process helps a lot when you're doing your independent research in PhD.
Yeah. So, see, actually, I think most of the students or the interns or those who are like, watching it via YouTube as well as in this particular Zoom platform, I'd like to know more about your life at ICT specifically in terms of the research activities that are done at your lab, as well as the projects in which you are directly involved into, right? So a brief overview of this.
Yeah. So ICT is a beautiful place. It's one of the most reputed institutes in India to pursue your master's or PhD. So I was very lucky enough, to give my entrance exam to score first, and to have that choice of selection of my guide. So I think overall that that starting of my PhD with a good stipend, everything just fell into place for me. So I'm really lucky, thankful to God for that. Life at ICT is very involved. It is always at a fast pace. There are the bachelor and the master students are so they take a lot of interest, whether it is curriculum or whether curricular activities. So there is always there are a lot of other extracurricular activities always going on. Now, when we come to research, we every guide has their own independent research labs. So when this happens, what is the most advantageous about this is right from the entry level researcher, that is the master's first year, to the PhD last year. All of these students work in the same lab. So when this happens, there is greater knowledge sharing. There is greater exchange of knowledge. So there is a roundtable. I'm specifically talking about my lab now. So our lab follows this culture of always discussing things. So whether it is first year masters or final PhD, if they're stuck in something, they are always coming forward, sitting on that round table and opening their laptop and showing these are the results that I've got. I'm stuck. I don't know what to do. And our lab has always this culture of asking and sharing and discussing the problem. So even if even somebody has some other input, so the same data is seen by me, I might deduce something else from the data. But if the same data of 5 values is seen by my colleague, he has a different perspective to look at those results. So with this cumulative mind of say 12 researchers, I'm sure the research level is going to go to a different level. Instead of a research is always a team activity. So if I'm only going to be, okay, this is confidential, I'm not going to discuss it with people. Of course, the hypothesis and the methods could be kept a little confidential. But at least at the point where you are stuck, where you don't know where to go ahead, you must collaborate with other team members, with other lab, or discuss in your get create to that particular research study. So like that in ICT, every guide I'm sure encourages teamwork. Every guide encourages team activity. There are a lot of interlabs and there are a lot of inter-department collaborations happening. So, if you have to have a good research, it is not just pharma. A pharma collaborates with a chemistry department. The pharma collaborates with a pharmacology department. Pharmaceutics collaborates with maybe polymer department to get new polymers, to know the use of those polymers in drug delivery. So like that is also an advantage because ICT has tremendous several different streams. So and every guide is always available for the other guide, to discuss ideas, to collaborate projects. So that way, life at ICT, 5 years as ICT has really been blissful.
Yeah. So Sita, one unique thing about your career, like which I can see is that you have actually studied or did your research at 3 different institutes in Mumbai, which are are known for different reasons, or in a very different way, unique way, I would say. Can you name one positive thing which really impacted you as an individual for each of the institute, be it BNCP, be it Westcop, or be it ICT?
Yeah. So BNCP had, since that was a new institute, they had a lot of new instrumentations. They were getting us accustomed to the new instrumentation, like UV. I've never seen a UV machine before. Of course, in the bachelor's, we never see a UV machine. But not just that, they allowed us to use it. they allowed us to have hands-on exposure on the UV instrument. So
Okay.
like that, I really feel young talent is very essential to encourage, because again there is no much age gap between students and the new professors. So with that kind of rapport sharing, I think that is really good for the institute to come forward. Then coming to Vivekanand College, as I mentioned that I did my master's project at Micro Labs. So there was no interaction of practice or Vivekanand College. But though Vivekananda was always open for all his resources, they had a extensive, nice library facility, internet connection. So we were always available for that. Just one minor thing in the pros and cons is when you complete your project in your academic institute. Like suppose if I would have done my project in Vivekanand itself, I would have done A to Z of my project, like right from literature search to formulation development to analytical method development validation, and then results and conclusion. Now, this is what happens in the academia, like when you're doing in your research lab in your institute. But when you shift that to micro labs, like when you shift that to an industry, so they have different departments, right? They have a different formulation department, they have a different analytical department, they have a different patent team. So yourself get involved only more in the formulation aspect. So for me, analytical method development, knowledge on analytical method development validation was not much. I never had hands-on exposure on analytical method development. In the same case, if I would have been at Vivekanand, maybe I would have also developed in my HPLC method. I would have also developed UV method. So this is one pro of doing in the college, your master's project in the college. So that is one thing. And when I come to ICT has no limitations for any instruments, for any facilities. So if your department facility is down, you can very well go to the other department to perform your activities. So nothing is stalled because there is no availability of facilities. We also have a central instrument room which has high-end facilities. So that is the major plus point of pursuing your longest research career, say 5 years, an old and established institute.
Yeah. So just for the sake of the viewers, this discussion is purely very personal, and this is not official views of any of the institutes. So this is a very general talk about the institute. So Sita, how what is like generally the process to select a thesis topic or a research topic? Because in industry usually what happens is usually you get a request from, let's say, the BD team, or okay, we have to file this first to file a para for ANDA, for example. These are the products based on, let's say, the dosage forms and all that are that capability the company has actually got. But then in academia, wherein you have very very broad areas available as far as research is concerned, then how is that actually done as such, and specifically at PhD level, or maybe at a institute like ICT? Yeah.
Yeah. So when we talk about ICT, for that matter, for selection of projects, so generally everybody have their own area of expertise. So it is preferable. It is not mandatory, but it is preferable if you gel into that kind of research ideas. So because it will be a lot easier for you to have the raw material, for you to have the resources in terms of facility and equipment, and of course for you to have support from the seniors. So in these terms, it is always advisable to take a research project, hypothesize a research idea which is in sync or in line with what is already happening in your research group. So this is one thing that is very advisable. Second thing, when you talk about the technology, so people have different interests. So somebody might be very interested in the films technology. Somebody might be interested in micro encapsulation technology. So this is something how our teachers have taught us in the bachelor's level, which induces interest in that. So then coming then purely on the interest. depending on the interest and the facilities that we have, because we cannot have a very optimistic approach. Like we need to ensure, of course we can have an optimistic approach, but we need to ensure that all of these get satisfied from our end. So this is what we have to do. So this is what we have to do in terms of guide with your supervisor. That is absolutely essential, because your supervisor is going to be your god for your whatever time you are in his lab and whatever time you're going to pursue your research with him. So it's very essential that you have an open, a sincere conversation with him in terms of hypothesis, in terms of idea discussion, not just that, also in terms of results discussion. Because results are something that you are going to get. You might not be in a position to discuss it or to understand it completely. So here is where you require a supervisor's input to understand what is actually happening with that research or that experiment that you have conducted. So all in all, this helps you to pick out your research topic and carry it forward smoothly to completion.
At what stage you feel like, for example, for those students who are doing their masters, at what stage they should at least take a call whether to actually go ahead with a PhD, or maybe like, of course, it's an individualized call. We cannot generalize these things, but then most of the students they get confused at what stage they should take this call to either go ahead for the PhD or the maybe the research experience with the industry.
Yeah, so that's a tricky question. In fact, that is a lot of question. Our lab master students also ask us, ma'am, what to do, how to do. So I think it is purely based on the interest that you have. So these days I've seen the students are very sharp. So if I am talking to a bachelor students at ICT, that fellow or that girl is so shrewd. She will tell me or he will tell me that, "नहीं ma'am, अभी पढ़ाई बहुत हो गया, अभी पैसा कमाना." So this is that thought and that sharpness that the students have at this age have, at this generation has, which we didn't have. So that is why we have taken the long route. We are studying, we are doing so much. So I think that the students are already sharp enough to understand where their interest lies. Now when it comes to PhD requires a lot of dedication. It requires a lot of, so if you are committed to give another 5 years at the least of your life to that research which might not give you positive results, to that research which you might have to do again and again and again to come to a conclusive result, then yes, you can pursue a PhD. Having said that, PhD is not like very difficult. You have ample advisors, supervisors, colleagues to help you to do that. But when you do your masters is like a mini research. So it is not an altogether new research, but it is something to give you a brief idea of what research is. So in your masters, after you do your project, maybe in the second year, maybe you get the results. Do you have that research aptitude? Are you able to have a plain and blind mind when you are doing that experiment? You can't be biased at the start of the experiment. Just because you want this particular results to match your hypothesis, you can't have a biased experimental method. You can't have a biased mind. So all these help you decide whether research is your area. When you get the results, do you have an unbiased mind to understand that, okay, this group has given me this results, this group has given me this results? Yeah, maybe my experiment is not working, maybe my developed formulation is not working. Then you go to the depth of understanding why my formulation is not working. So if these all constitute of research aptitude. So in the masters, when you're doing your experiments, when you're doing your research, you very well understand yourself. Whether are you interested in research? Are you interested in the core of research? So this will help you. If yes, if you have interest of finding out in depth why you are want to do this, what is the underlying reason why you are getting this result? If you are interested for the answer of those why, then yes, PhD is your field. You must go ahead and contribute to research to growing India.
Yeah. So actually, Sita, next question is kind of a sub question to this particular question. Actually, tell us more about the funding opportunities, because most of the times master students are like, generally अगर हम किसी को पूछते हैं, like, if they want to go ahead for PhD, then mostly they hear like, कि अगर funding मिलता है, scholarship मिलता है, then would go for a PhD. Is it advisable to go for PhD if you, let's say, don't have a funding or scholarship as such? I mean, of course, this again cannot be a generalized question. It would all depend on like, individually. But then, what's your take on that?
Yeah. So PhD is mandatorily very important. One, to identify your guide, to know your supervisor. Second thing is to understand on what topic you might be interested in. And then the third thing is funding. So now, if you go to the to most of the government websites, UGC, NIPER, ICT, so you get to know what are the funding opportunities that are available, and there are actually ample funding opportunities. Suppose for a single girl child, there are opportunities. For backwards, there are opportunities. But the problem with our students or us as journalists, we don't keep an open mind or open ears to what is there. So I advise all the master students, even if you don't want to PhD, but still stay abreast with whatever is happening. Like your friends might gather knowledge. You don't want to do PhD. You don't have an intention of doing PhD, but you still keep an open ear to whatever is happening. So this will help you and your friends to know what is there. So now coming to funding, there are a lot of industry sponsored project also. So maybe if you know the guide and the subject area which might interest you, if you approach the guide by email or by meeting them personally, they might have a ready vacancy for you. They might have already a project that is sanctioned and the money is available with them. They are looking for a research fellow. So maybe you could fit into that. Or the second thing is if you approach a guide of who has already expertise in that particular area, and if you have a project in mind, you may discuss it with her or him. You might to write it in a grant proposal, and there are numerous proposal acceptance team where you submit your proposal and they grant you. So if it could be on maybe it could be on infections, maybe it could be different subject areas. So there are a lot of members, there are a lot of committees that evaluate your proposals and help you get it sanctioned. So the main is the guide. Which guide do you want to approach and where does your subject interest lies? Apart from this, I have a couple of, then a couple of colleges also have their own entrance exams. So if you clear their own entrance exams, they have their own fundings. Like suppose UGC, BSR funding. So UGC, if you clear their examination, they have allotted almost, say, per subject area, say 10 to 15 number of stipends to grant a number of candidates, say 10 to 15 candidates per year in this particular field. So if you clear that entrance exam, you are automatically sanctioned to get their stipend. And then you collaborate with the guide and go ahead with the project with their funding. So there are numerous channels how you can get into PhD.
Sita, at what stage you are currently as far as your PhD is concerned?
Yeah, so I'm on my 5th year. I just finished 5 years in March, and I have finished all my table work, and I have 2 publications to my credit, and I've submitted my thesis to my professor for check.
Yeah, and can you brief the students about something about research writing, because I think that's the area which you have been involved into recent past, and you've been delivering lots of sessions on that as well. Yeah.
Right. So to students, I would say that as important as research writing is similarly important. Now, what is research writing? If you do research, how will you communicate it to the world? In what format will you communicate to the world or to your fellow researchers? So this happens in the form of scientific writing. Now, I have a couple of YouTube videos where I have explained what is scientific writing and what are research articles in much detail. But to give quick background, you can actually communicate your ideas or your research activities in different formats of research article. It could be expert opinions on a particular subject. It could be novel ideas on a particular subject. So there are ample journals that are available. So if you go and check those journals to see what kind of articles they're accepting, you can very well communicate your ideas. Now, as a master student or first year student or as bachelor final year students, it is highly advisable that you engage yourself in writing at least review articles, at least couple of review articles in national journals. This will help you a lot in terms of collating scientific data, reading a lot of scientific articles. See, one article is almost 20 pages, so you need to read that and understand what are those points takeaways from that paper, which is the most difficult. So all this, if you do at your bachelor stage itself, maybe final bachelor's, and then you end to masters, writing a research article in the second year masters is not a big task at all. Plus you have a lot of seniors guiding you, plus you have a lot of the gist of how to go about that article, how is the structure of the article, what are the different referencing softwares that you use. So you are already accustomed to all this. So I highly recommend or advise the final year bachelor's and master's students to start writing with review articles.
So Sita, I think this would be really helpful for those watching this particular video, and if they are looking forward for the research careers. So beyond this, what else, skill set or soft skill set, or like the other areas, maybe something which is let's say related to GMP or QA or regulatory, or maybe patents or other stuff that you feel would be helpful for them if they are looking forward to a having a PhD or a research career moving ahead.
So when you are your PhD, your idea, your hypothesis is your baby, and you have to develop that baby into a full-grown child in a period of 5 years. So right from the GMP, right from the hypothesis, the research, the QA, QC, formulator, analysis person, everything, you are that parent for that baby. So you need to be an overall person. You need to have an overall idea if you have to develop that idea into a full-grown baby. So here is where I say that the industrial experience really matters. So here you don't have, you have only theoretical knowledge. But when you come from the industry, you have a practical sense of looking into it. You have a practical orientation of whether this can proceed to the market, whether this can come to the industry, whether it can, pass the regulatory bodies and come to the US or the Europe market. So this is the thought process that you are supposed to have right from the first year. Now, suppose I will just deviate from your question a little. Now, suppose if I talk about your stages of PhD, which generally just this is my opinion. So, in the first step, you are actually, ideating the hypothesis. You are trying to find out. So, in PhD, it is very, very commonly said that don't find a problem just because you have a solution. You first see if the problem actually exists, then you propose a solution. It is not that, okay, I have this solution, I have this drug, I can make this, I can enhance the bioavailability. Okay, let's go in search of the disadvantages of that drug or, problem for that drug. No, this is not how a true researcher will not function. So then the first year is about ideating and discussing with your guide, getting his inputs. Then the second year goes in starting or supervising your seniors and understanding the working of the instruments and a basic of your particular research. Then your third year and fourth year goes in actually completing your research work, doing a lot of research, spending a lot of time in the lab, coming to a conclusive and logical answer to the results you have got. And coming to the third year end or the fourth year, you start writing or thinking about writing a research paper, because research paper also takes time to write. So when you have around 60% of the results and you know how your research is moving forward, then in the fourth year you start writing your paper, and then by the end of fifth year you can submit your paper, have that acceptance of the paper, and maybe your guide can check your thesis and finish with your PhD work. So this is the entire flow of PhD. Now coming to your question, sir, I actually forgot what your question was.
Yeah, so my question was specific, as you rightly mentioned, that the master students or UG students should have that skill set of writing a review article or research article. What other skill set do you feel like, really would be helpful if they are looking forward to a long-term career in research, or like, want to do PhD?
Right. So PhD, as I mentioned, is in whole in whole. So writing skills definitely will be a very important point when you are pursuing your PhD. Other than that, team effort. So research is a team-oriented work, collaborative effort, because you might collaborate with others. Then during your own mental health and mental stability has to be so strong that you fail, but you still don't leave that research topic. Maybe at the end of 1 year, this has been my personal experience. At 1.5 years into my PhD, I could not develop a validated HPLC method for that particular drug. I had lost my hopes because that was the only hypothesis that I had in mind then. I locked my room for 2 days without talking to anybody and doing literature to find if I can find an analytical, somehow I can develop that analytical method. Then, luckily, thanks to the seniors in my lab who guided me, who said that, okay, just put a hold, give it 3, 4 months. In 3, 4 months, I'm sure you can think and come to another idea. So, this is the perseverance what I'm talking about to have a PhD. What we other the skill sets that we are supposed to have is sincerity, good laboratory practice, good documentation practice, because at the fifth year, at the end of the fifth year, when you're writing your thesis, you have no clue what you've done in the first 6 months of your lab, because everything is new. So, that discipline of maintaining and organizing folders as soon as I finish one result study. This also holds true for masters actually. As soon as you finish your one set of experiments, suppose you finish differential scanning calorimetry, you make a folder of DSC and you put all those valid whatever data you have into that folder. So at the end of fifth year, when I'm checking, I know, oh yeah, I've done DSC, I open that and I get all the results in line. So sincerity, hard work definitely goes without saying. Discipline, ability to understand results, ability to weigh the results is very important, because if you don't do that, then you're giving a false positive result to the entire community, entire scientific community. So there are some skills that you need to have when you are, pursuing your PhD.
Yeah. So those who are available in the call, Zoom call, as well as watching it on YouTube, if you have any questions, you can just put it under the comments or chat option as such. We'll be taking all those questions. A very different aspect of Sita's career has also been her stint with entrepreneurship as such, which many of us are actually not aware of, so we want to know about that, Sita.
Yeah, so that is a very different field altogether, but that is still connected with research. So what, after I finished my masters, and when I was through halfway into micro, before I got into PhD, so I thought that I have so many research capabilities. Like I am, good at research. So I wanted to do something. I wanted to own something of my own. So that is where this entire picture of being an entrepreneur came into my mind. So we, along with of course, with a lot of support from my family, we researched into making herbal cosmetics. So the cosmetics, say lipsticks, have a lot of heavy metals, which over the years get deposited on the lips and gets permeated and has ill effects on the body. So what we try to do is completely avoid those ingredients that cause those heavy metal production, like arsenic, like lead. So we ventured into a little different set, which might not give its look and feel of maybe a Lakme or a Revlon product. It might not be that, but of course it is safe. So in this way, we researched and ventured into herbal cosmetics. We owned patents for that. We put practice in third party manufacturing, and this went on for quite decent, and there was good response for the shades, good response for the look and feel, good product acceptability. So this went on for quite a year, say 1.5 years, and we manufactured multiple batches. But somewhere in the line, I got admitted to PhD, and there was a conflict of interest, of course, because when you are under sponsored by the government, you are not supposed to be, under your own name, you're not supposed to be doing anything. So that was one thing. And second thing is my partner moved to the US for his further studies. So when everything fell into place, and my entire time used to be taken over at PhD at the Institute of Chemical Technology with my own research. So with everything falling into place, this thing could not make a mark and could not survive. So it's still active, but I mean the company is still there, but it is temporary in abeyance. We are not doing any marketing of the product.
Yeah, I think that's a kind of a deadly combination, like, because most of the researchers, generally what we have seen is they don't look out for the entrepreneurship kind of options. But I think that's really good to, because, generally when we work with these startups and all, we generally tell that, like, a kind of experience with startups or entrepreneurship, maybe, like, success or failure is a different thing, but you learn a lot actually, through that. Sita, we have questions. This is coming from our YouTube live by Chaitanya Pawar. Any specific or recommended online platforms for graduates or master students to keep updated about literature writing?
About literature writing.
Yeah, or scientific writing, I would say. Yeah.
Okay. So the best thing is to open journals and read a lot of scientific articles. So, every day there are thousands of articles getting published online. So you pick up your specific subject area which you like. And also, if you are in the research field, you have to always stay connected with what is happening in your field. Especially for PhD, I start research for the first year, and at the end of the third year, if I'm not updated with what is happening in my field, at the end of third year, I might know that okay, this research has already been published. Somebody has already done it, because 3 years is a long time gap. So you have to always be available and be connected to the internet. And when you see different authors publishing and you read their papers, you get a very nice idea of how they are communicating their idea. And that idea, that reading their papers will help you a lot to formulate and write your scientific paper. So I think that is the best method how you can grasp ideas, to know what they're trying to communicate, to structure and write it in a very effective way. So reading a lot of papers makes a lot of difference.
Yeah, the next question is coming from Harshita Dalvi. She's a master student at Naipur, Hyderabad. Her question, of course, you mentioned about you preparing for GRE and now doing your PhD in India. So her question is about what's your take on doing PhD outside or within India?
Okay, so that's again a tricky question. I wouldn't, put something above the other. But of course, when you do PhD abroad, you are more into the basic science as compared to the applied science that we are doing in India. So if you're interested in basic science, you think and take that. Most the major problem in deciding PhD is a number of years, and I don't think abroad in India we are very different. All of them take five to 6 years. So that is not a question which used to be earlier. Abroad used to finish in 3 years, and India used to take 5 to 6 years. So that is no more a point of comparison now. The next thing comes availability of facilities and the type of research that is going on. So if somebody is really interested in the basic science, then they must, explore opportunities abroad. But having said that, India is not bad at all.
Yeah, and in fact, I would like to second what Sita has mentioned. It all depends on the kind of lab you're working, the kind of guide you're working with, your compatibility with the those research areas as well. So we have a question from Swarnadeep Banerjee. He's the research scholar at Bombay College of Pharmacy. He's asking about what about the career opportunities after doing a successful PhD as such. I think, and my question related to this is, what are your future plans?
Okay, so after PhD, again, you have done a lot of research. So there is, of course, the major opening is academia. You would like to, transfer your knowledge to the students. You would like to explore more research opportunities. So if you have an institute like ICT, where the professors have their own labs, they're open to writing a lot of grants, they are so that kind of research is encouraged. So if the institute is like that, then and you have your interest area again, if in the research, then academics is the best option. Now based on the last interview that I saw of Deepak about the techno marketing, so people are also after PhD, the companies, the excipient companies are looking for technical knowledge in their particular chemistry, in their particular excipients or maybe product, which a PhD candidate who has used in this PhD tenure may be able to contribute more. So techno marketing is another stream. So there are different schools of PhD. There is another stream of postdoctorate fellow, which of course is more commonly known as PDF and is more commonly abroad. So PDF is advanced stage of research that you go into a foreign lab and you try to, it is basically advancement of research in their lab. So these are the different opportunities that are available, and yeah, everything is open after PhD also.
Yeah, since we are actually speaking about the future as such, I think one question that has been like really very common as such nowadays, and so that would be actually kind of last question from my end is about how do you see the research career specifically, especially after the kind of situation we are into since last 2.5 months, as far as the pharma research is concerned, because also we have seen lots of drug discovery getting closed down in India in last few years. So like one thing is in a short term, and another thing is in a long term. How do you see the research career, especially in India, because of these, like the COVID-19 or the Corona situation?
That's a very good question, actually. And in fact, I was attending another seminar wherein a professor from Germany, he spoke about how his research is not affected at all because of this COVID pandemic. The reason being, he's completely into in silico simulations. So in silico simulations is basically simulations in the computer. So he his entire research work is to get data from the analytical instruments, to get data, clinical data, to, from the after the pharmacokinetic studies, and simulate it and make sense out of it by using a computer software. So he says in that entire 2.5 years, my nothing has been affected for me. So I think that is the future that is coming along. That is the future that we are seeing ahead. The use of artificial intelligence, that use of computers, the use of the entire automated way is really going to help advance science, not just abroad, but also this is a way in India that is going to we are going to see in the coming years. So that is one thing. Second thing is, after this lockdown ends, of course things are going to go back to normal. And research labs are something, as we discussed before this discussion, there is no alternative for practical science. So practical science research laboratories are the only way.
Yes, so I think we are done with the questions as well. Students, anyone would like to ask any question as such? Anything specific, or maybe generally about her career as well as the formulation activities and her expertise as well. So you can get in touch with us at pharmaliterati@gmail.com. If you have any further questions, we can get you connected directly with Sita. So thank you so much, Sita. It's been really pleasure to have you on this particular platform of Pharma Literati Talks. And lastly, please give a shout out for Pharma Literati YouTube channel.
Definitely, sir. Thank you very much. As I already mentioned, Pharma Literati is doing a great job. I wish if I was like, I was a student and I had this platform to interact with budding people. I wouldn't say accomplished people, with budding, professionals in different fields, be it techno marketing, be it somebody pursuing their study and career in Germany, being a PhD researcher, being somebody else. I would know exactly what to know. And that is what I like about the aim of Pharma Literati, is being connected to the students. And I really appreciate the entire effort that goes into it, that entire coordination and the interns along under your guidance. I really think it is a very good initiative taken by you, sir. And I've already always appreciated your connection to the students, not to the professionals. Now I really like it, sir. Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, thank you so much. And lastly, I would also like to thank the interns who were really were coordinating this. My intern who has been working with us since last 2 years, Dipali, as well as our intern, Dipali is working with Gallup Institute of Pharmacy. She's a student, as well as then we have Kinnari, who is from NCRT Sterling's Institute of Pharmacy. And also thanks a lot all those who joined us for this particular session via Zoom, as well as those who watched us live on the YouTube channel. Hopefully we would have another set of opportunity to get connected with you. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you, sir. Bye.